A front door opens to the warm night. A car engine idles by the curb. In the next minute, there will be gunfire, a crash, and a simple story that sounds safer than the truth. Was it really just a traffic accident? You're about to find out why that first impression didn't hold. You're watching Twisted Case, true crime told in a clear, documentary voice, centered on people first and evidence always. If careful, human-first storytelling is your thing, stick around. Ty Underwood was 24. She worked nights as a nursing assistant at a retirement home in Tyler, Texas. People who knew her describe a steady, caring presence, someone who would check on you after a long shift and make sure you ate before you left. Ty was a trans woman. She had plans to enroll in a formal nursing program and turn those long nights into a career with an RN badge. Picture her apartment on an ordinary evening. Hairspray, fabric softener, a porch light that stayed on a little too long. There was a small stack of mail by the door, pay stubs, coupons, a community college brochure, everyday paperwork that says, "I'm building something." Across town, another young adult was trying to secure his future. Carlton Ray Champion Jr. played football at Texas College. His hours revolved around practice, classes, and dorm life. From the outside, you would read him as a typical student athlete. Team jacket, cafeteria timing, strength drills in cold air. That was one part of his life. The other part lived on his phone. Private messages, photos, and plans. In those messages, there was Ty. Tyler is a mid-size East Texas city. In January, nights can hold a damp warmth. Streetlights throw amber pools onto wet pavement. It's the kind of place where a late-night car crash can seem ordinary. A driver loses control, hits a pole, officers make a report, and the city moves on. On January 26, 2015, that's how the story first sounded. Keep one detail in mind. Ty and Carlton were in a relationship. It wasn't a one-time meeting. Friends knew, messages show it. That continuity matters, because what follows was not a random collision of strangers. Before sunrise on January 26, 2015, a 911 call reported a single-car crash on West 24th Street. Officers arrived to a red car that had struck a utility pole. The scene looked like many others. Airbags, glass, the steady flash of patrol lights. The first label was simple and forgiving: car accident. As the headlights cooled, details contradicted the first story. Shell casings lay in a nearby driveway. Bullet holes marked the car's body. Bloodstains formed patterns that suggested gunshot wounds, not injuries from a crash. An autopsy would later confirm fatal gunshot wounds to the torso. The timeline pointed to gunfire first and the crash second. That sequence matters. It turns an accident into a crime scene. If this was a random road accident, why were casings in a driveway? If it was a stranger, why did the evidence point to someone inside the car? Was the crash a cover for something else? These questions moved the investigation from accident to homicide. Here is the irreversible beat that anchors the case. Ty and Carlton planned to meet late that night. Their messages show the arrangement: a pickup point near 25th Street, close to the Texas College dorms. Ty texted, "I'm here." Shortly after, campus surveillance cameras recorded Carlton leaving his dorm around 2:13 a.m. About 15 minutes later, those same cameras recorded him returning around 2:27 a.m. Between those two timestamps, gunshots were fired. Ty's car crashed. The accident story began. We're going to climb this step by step. Each development adds new information, tightens the timeline, or removes a misleading path. By the time we reach the top, you should see a clear picture. Beat 1. The messages, the map in plain text. Detectives secured Ty's phone and obtained records for the messaging app both used. The thread showed normal relationship friction, jealousy about a reactivated dating profile, short arguments, reconciliations. Late that night, the planning was plain. Meet near 25th Street. The final incoming message from Ty said she had arrived. The thread went silent around 2:06 a.m. That silence is not proof by itself. It is one point on the map. Why it matters. Messages place Carlton and Ty in communication in real time and set a meeting near his dorm shortly before the crash. Beat 2. The cameras, the objective clock. Campus security cameras are not dramatic. They do not care about narrative. They mark movement and time. Investigators watched the footage. At about 2:13 a.m., Carlton left his dorm. He wore a camo-style jacket and dark pants. At about 2:27 a.m., he returned. The meeting spot was a short distance away, close enough for a quick walk or run. Why it matters. The camera times line up with the message thread and the moment when nearby residents heard gunshots. They also show that Carlton could have left, met Ty, and returned within that window. Beat 3. Physical evidence inside the car. Forensic testing found Carlton's DNA on the passenger side seatbelt and the inside passenger door latch of Ty's car. DNA alone does not tell you the time of contact, but taken together with the messages and camera footage, it supports that he was inside the car in a way that fits the rest of the timeline. Why it matters. The passenger side is where the shooter likely sat or leaned. Finding his DNA on parts people touch while seated supports the state's theory about his position during the shooting. Beat 4. The scene geometry, shots before the crash. Shell casings were found in a driveway near the crash site. Bullet trajectories in the car's body pointed from the passenger side toward the driver. This suggests gunfire began outside or at the passenger side. Then the car moved, likely because Ty tried to drive away while wounded. The car traveled a short distance and struck a pole. Why it matters. The order of events becomes clear. Shots first, then crash. That counters any claim of a pure traffic accident or an unknown drive-by. Beat 5. Deleted app and device activity. During an interview, Carlton said a messaging app, the same one used in his conversations with Ty, had been deleted. He reported deleting it shortly before speaking with police. Digital forensics also showed activity on a device linked to him around 2:47 a.m., which did not match his earliest explanations. Why it matters. Deleting an app connected to a homicide victim raises obvious questions. Investigators had already retrieved much of the conversation, but deletions suggested consciousness of guilt or, at a minimum, an attempt to control what investigators could see. Beat 6. What friends and roommates said. Police spoke with Ty's roommate and with friends who knew the couple. They confirmed the relationship, said they had seen Carlton at Ty's apartment, and described the recent arguments. This was not a man who had just discovered something shocking that night. It was someone already involved in Ty's life. Why it matters. Relationship evidence replaces rumor with context. It undercuts early speculation that a sudden discovery in the car caused a panic. The people closest to Ty described something else, ongoing intimacy mixed with control and jealousy. Beat 7. The alternate suspect tested and cleared. Investigators also looked at another man Ty had messaged. On paper, he seemed plausible. Nearby location, possible motive. Police interviewed him, reviewed his phone, and collected DNA with consent. His account held. The evidence did not connect him to the scene. He was cleared. Why it matters. Good investigations eliminate other suspects.
Clearing the alternate strengthens the focus on the remaining suspect, whose messages, movement, and DNA intersect with the crime. Beat 8. Statements in custody handled with caution. A jailhouse inmate later reported a conversation with Carlton in which Carlton allegedly acknowledged problems with Ty around the time of the killing. The law treats jailhouse statements carefully. You cannot convict based only on that kind of testimony. But here, the prosecution did not rely on it alone. They used it alongside messages, cameras, DNA, and scene evidence. Why it matters. Even if you set the jailhouse statement aside, the other evidence forms a coherent chain. That is important for both juries and appeals. Beat 9. The missing pieces, and why absence doesn't outweigh presence. No gun was recovered. Investigators also did not find obvious blood spatter on the camo jacket seen on camera. Defense attorneys pointed to these gaps. Forensic testimony addressed why those absences were not decisive. Shots could be fired from a position that does not produce heavy backspatter on clothing. The missing weapon does not erase bullet paths, casings, and DNA inside the car. Why it matters. Trials often involve both what exists and what is missing. Here, the items that exist, digital records, physical traces, and a tight timeline, carry more weight than the items that do not. Beat 10. Community response. Naming what happened. Within days, friends, neighbors, and local advocates held a candlelight vigil for Ty. They spoke her name, emphasized her work and plans, and asked the city to be clear about who she was, a woman loved by a community. The park was quiet except for voices and the wind. Candles flickered against the early evening air.
By December 2015, the case went to trial. The prosecution built a single direct line in the jury's mind. Late-night messages arranging a pickup near the dorm. Security footage showing Carlton leaving at 2:13 a.m. and returning at 2:27 a.m. Gunfire before the crash, as shown by casings and bullet trajectories. Carlton's DNA on the passenger seatbelt and door latch. Deletion of the messaging app just before police interviews. Friends and roommates confirming the relationship and recent conflict. The alternate suspect eliminated. And a careful explanation of why missing items like the gun did not undo the rest. The jury returned a verdict, guilty of murder. The judge sentenced Carlton Ray Champion Jr. to life in prison. The courtroom was quiet when the decision was read. That kind of quiet has a specific weight, the sound of a story settling into the public record. The appeal. In 2016, the defense appealed. One argument focused on the jailhouse statement, saying it could not be trusted without strong corroboration. The appeals court reviewed the entire record. Even if you ignore the jailhouse statement, the court said, the other evidence tends to connect Carlton to the crime. Messages, camera timestamps, the passenger side DNA, the crime scene geometry, and the elimination of other suspects. The court affirmed the conviction. The life sentence stood. What the labels teach us. This case shows how first labels can be comfortable and wrong. Traffic accident is easier to live with than homicide. But as soon as investigators found casings and bullet holes, the label had to change. A good documentary view holds both moments in frame. The human impulse to believe the simple story and the professional duty to replace it with the accurate one. It is tempting to let Carlton's status as a college football player dominate the story. It should not. The person at the center is Ty, her work, her plans, her circle, her ordinary goals. The documentary lens keeps her in focus as we track the evidence that leads to a conviction. That is not about diminishing accountability. It is about remembering why accountability matters. We should be careful with motives. Courts punish acts, not identities. But context matters when we try to learn from what happened. Early headlines in some places suggested a sudden discovery of Kai's identity. The record of messages, visits, and friend testimony points to something else: secrecy mixed with jealousy and control inside an existing relationship. In that kind of pressure, a person can choose violence and then try to hide it behind a car crash. A question worth asking: if your safety depends on someone else keeping a secret, is that safety or a slow risk that grows by the day? Notice how many doors mark this story. A dorm room door opens at 2:13 a.m. A passenger door opens on a quiet street. An officer's door opens onto a scene first read as a wreck. The courtroom doors open for the verdict. Each threshold represents a choice that narrows what comes next. The documentary record, messages, camera timestamps, forensic reports, becomes the architecture around those choices. Sound: the chime of a phone notification, the click of a steering column, 2 or 3 quick gunshots, the crunch of metal, and then silence. Light: amber street lamps on damp pavement, fluorescent courtroom lights that tell no lies. These anchors are not for drama. They are there because that is how people remember. They are also how investigators rebuild what happened when words conflict. This was not a mystery with unknown attackers in the dark. It was not a random drive-by. It was not the sudden shock of finding out who someone was in the moment. The record shows a relationship already in motion. A meeting was set. Within minutes, Ty was shot and her car crashed. The staging failed because the evidence did not agree with the story the shooter wanted others to believe. The dates that mark a family calendar. January 26, 2015. Ty is shot, her car crashes, the investigation begins. Late January 2015. Police take Carlton into custody on a separate violation as the homicide case takes shape. The murder charge follows. December 17 and 18, 2015. A jury convicts, the court sentences him to life. August 16, 2016. An appeals court affirms the conviction. For a family, these dates are not bullet points. They are weather systems that come around every year. They do not move on a schedule you choose. A good narrative does not rely on a single piece of proof. This case didn't. Instead, it built strength from several independent lines that point in the same direction. Digital planning, messages arranging the meeting near the dorm. Objective movement, cameras showing exit and return at times that fit the gunshots and crash. Physical placement, DNA on the passenger side inside Ty's car. Scene logic, casings and bullet paths showing shots before the crash. Behavior after the fact, deleting the app used to communicate with the victim. Context from witnesses, friends and roommates confirming the ongoing relationship. And exclusion of others, an alternate suspect investigated and cleared.
Even with missing items, a gun never found, no dramatic spatter on clothing, the total picture remained clear. That is what jurors are asked to weigh. Talking about trans victims demands care. It is possible to be precise without being sensational. The documentary approach keeps language clean and human. Ty was a woman. She was a healthcare worker. She had a plan. Her friends and family mourned her as the person they knew, not as a headline. We honor that by saying her name clearly, describing her life plainly, and keeping the focus on what the evidence shows. If you witness a scene that seems simple, pause. Accidents do happen, but evidence has a way of speaking when you let it. If shell casings appear, if a timeline bends, if a deletion shows up in a device log, those are not minor details. They are the bridge between a comfortable story and the accurate one. The accurate one is most often the one that helps a community learn and, hopefully, prevents the next tragedy. There is a hard tension here. People deserve privacy. At the same time, secrecy can create danger.
especially when combined with control and image management. Reporters and detectives have to walk that line in public. Families have to live on it in private. So where do we draw it? Do we describe secrecy and identity as part of a motive to warn others about real risks? Or do we strip that away and keep only the bare elements of the crime to avoid stigma and protect others' privacy? The right answer is not simple. It may change from case to case, but the question should not be ignored. Recap for clarity. The case started as a reported traffic accident. Evidence at the scene, casings and bullet holes, quickly turned it into a homicide. Messages show Ty and Carlton planned a late-night meeting near his dorm. Cameras recorded him leaving at 2:13 a.m. and returning at 2:27 a.m. DNA placed him on the passenger side of Ty's car. He deleted the messaging app linked to Ty before his police interview. Friends and a roommate confirmed an ongoing relationship and recent arguments. An alternate suspect was investigated and cleared. A jury convicted him of murder. The sentence was life. The appeal failed. This is the documentary spine. Each line is independently understandable. Together, they tell one story. In the end, investigators did what they are supposed to do. They replaced a comforting label with a correct one. They moved from car crash to homicide, from rumor to record, from suspicion to proof. A jury weighed that proof and reached a verdict. An appeals court tested the structure and found it sound. Ty should be remembered for her life as much as her death, for the way she cared for residents at work, for the plan to move from assistant to registered nurse, for the apartment porch light that stayed on too long because she wanted friends to feel safe walking up the steps. For you, the viewer, when a story involves identity and secrecy, public discussion can help or harm. So here's the conversation prompt for the comments. When the official story softens the truth, calling gunfire a crash or a relationship a rumor, how should the justice system and the press frame motive? Should they name secrecy and identity to warn others about real risks, even if so doing can increase stigma? Or should they avoid that framing to protect privacy, even if that leaves some dangers less visible? Where would you draw the line between justice through transparency and harm through exposure, and why? Please keep it respectful. The goal is to learn, not to score points.
Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe for more gripping true crime breakdowns, mysteries, and criminal psychology stories, only on Twisted Case.